Hi, Abby. Thanks for your questions. So, in regards to the question about if I had unlimited funds, what would I do with it? Right now, I think that one of the most important things is to try to help stabilize what's happening in our economy with specific regard to our healthcare sector. Um, One of the things that we certainly can't afford in northern Maine is to lose one of our rural hospitals. And so one of the things that I would do is increase the reimbursement rates that hospitals get paid through Maine Care so that they can afford to continue to provide services. If I had unlimited funds, I would say that Maine Care rates should be increased across the board because what's happening is that when the reimbursement rates are, in some cases, pennies on the dollar for the services that get provided by rural healthcare providers, and not just in a hospital setting, but also in any sort of setting that takes Maine Care. And you're talking too about the folks that provide services for people with individual intellectual and developmental disabilities. That's a huge problem. And so those folks, they should be prioritized if we had more funding. As you probably know, given what's happened with the economy lately, we simply don't have unlimited funds right now, and so prioritizing those folks, I think, is going to be a big challenge next session. But I think that your question is a really great one. You should also look at the way that public schools are funded. I've worked hard in the legislature, particularly on the education committee, to try to bridge the gap that exists between the funding of rural schools versus urban schools. And it's not, in my opinion, a fair way to go about it. Urban schools get paid more, and therefore they can pay their teachers more from the state of Maine, as opposed to their rural counterparts like what we have here in Presque Isle. And so if you're a teacher and you can make 20% more in pay by going to a coastal community or Portland or a more urban area, that's a big problem, and it's a problem with how we recruit teachers up here too. And I think it's something that should seriously be addressed by the legislature, and if we had more funding, I feel confident that we could do that. I'd also, the third point that I'd make is in regards to infrastructure. I think we need to have, right now, the vast majority of our roads and bridges are paid for by the gas tax. And, folks, there's a lot of resistance to raising a gas tax. So if we had more funding, I think that one place to send it would be to transportation infrastructure, roads, bridges, culverts, that sort of thing. As well as making investments in broadband expansion. Maybe not necessarily running fiber to everybody's house. I don't think that's a realistic goal, but I do think one thing that is realistic is to work with the private sector and collaborate, maybe through the use of tax credits or something else on the state government side, to incentivize that collaboration to deliver high-speed internet to every door in Aroostook County. So hope that answers your question, and I'll look forward to answering the next one here in just a minute. Hi again, Abby. Thanks for your second question about what I think the most important issues facing our country are today. I'll certainly speak from my perspective in Maine. I think in Maine we're going to have a really tough time dealing with the economy. So are many other states, and that encompasses a lot of things. The term economy is a broad term and kind of vague, but everything from small and medium and large businesses, in particular, a lot of smaller businesses across rural places have been hit pretty hard. I mean, I'm sure that you noticed that some businesses closed down during this pandemic, and it's not expected that they're going to reopen, and that's a big loss, particularly for small communities. So I think we need to figure out how we're going to stabilize our economy first, and try to stop the bleed, and deal with that in the short term. But then in the long term, I think that this recovery that we're on is going to be one that doesn't get solved overnight. I think it's going to take years. And I think that there is a role the government can play in that. But at the same time, I think that we also need to be better bridge builders between the public and the private sector, so that we're providing those businesses with what they actually need, or in some cases just getting out of the way so that those businesses can continue to create jobs and opportunities in rural communities. I also think that another big challenge we're facing is a sort of lack of engagement from younger people, and I see it all the time that I'm a millennial, and I'm the youngest person in the legislature, and I hope that changes. I hope that more young people get involved, and step up in whatever leadership capacity that they can, in their own communities, because the reality is that the consequences of what's happening right now, both at the federal level and at the state level, and the local level, are going to be things that impact our generation longer, and more seriously than any other generation. And so it makes sense that we should have a seat at that table, right? One of the things I'm really concerned about is the sort of out of control spending that you're seeing down in DC. I think that's a really big problem, and nobody's talking about it, but we should be, because the bill is eventually going to come due, and when that happens, it's going to be impacting us more so than our parents and our grandparents. And it may not take the shape, it'll probably look differently when it impacts us, but it'll be in ways like higher interest rates. So it makes things like going to college more expensive, like buying a house more expensive, or a car, in the form of things like tariffs and other different trade penalties that'll be imposed on the United States if we can't pay back our debts, and deal with our deficit. And that'll make things more expensive, and that's not a good scenario for anybody. So I think that we need to get a handle on our spending. I hope that it's the millennial generation that can figure that one out, because it needs to happen. So that would be my advice. Those are the problems that I'm identifying as we look sort of long term. And I think one of the better ways that we can deal with them is by getting more young people involved. So if you and your classmates are interested in learning more about what it's like to be in state government as a young person, and we're not far off in age in the grand scheme of things, then please reach out. My contact info is listed on my website, treystewart.com. And if anybody's interested in coming to the State House and shadowing for a day, or just picking my brain or any of my colleagues' brains, then happy to help coordinate that effort, and see what we can do to maybe get you guys involved at a younger age as well, and hopefully help address some of these problems that we've laid out. So thanks for your question. Hey Malachi, this is Trey Stewart, just responding to your question. I think it's a great one. The reality is that a lot of young people leave Northern Maine, and it's tough to get them back. So I've really focused on policies that help not only retain young people here, but also to attract ones from across the country and across the world. As you know, it's a great place to grow up. It's a great place to have your childhood, to engage in the community. You're at a great school system, and there's a lot of benefits to being here, but part of the effort is in getting that word out to others. And I think right now the time is right to do that with the pandemic that's going on. Folks, particularly that are living in urban settings, are looking for other places to go. So I think we should capitalize on this opportunity. It's a silver lining here, as we're struggling to manage everything else that's going on. But I think that there is a silver lining there, and particularly with technology being what it is, a lot of folks, working professionals, could telecommute to their place of work, so they could be making good money while still living in rural Maine. And beyond that, making sure that folks that are here know about the opportunities that exist here. Just about every employer is hiring right now. There are a ton of good, not just jobs, but career opportunities up in Aroostook County. And I know it's appealing to young folks. I went away for college myself, but when you get done college, if you have left, you should consider coming back and consider the opportunities that are here, particularly for upward mobility as folks phase out of the workforce. Certainly if you're going to college here at either UMFK, UMPI, or NMCC, there's plenty of opportunities to find a meaningful career right here. So I would encourage those folks to try to stay here. Specifically, I think that what we need to do as legislators is create an environment that is conducive to those opportunities. And so I've worked really hard to promote the policies that do create more opportunities, things like making investments into higher education so that you don't have to leave Aroostook County, making investments into broadband, and generally being involved, right? As a young person, I think it's critical that other young people step up and get involved and realize that it's never too early to start giving back to your community in whatever way you can. And so I would encourage you, particularly folks, kids that are your age, to start thinking about what sort of civic groups can I get involved in, what sort of clubs or organizations, Rotary, Kiwanis, find something that matches with your interests, and then find a way to incorporate that as a way to give back. That's what I would recommend to young folks, and those policies that I mentioned in the legislature are the ones that I have worked on. I feel like I've been a champion for pro-job policies in the House in my 4 years in the House, and will continue to be in the Senate. So I hope that answers your question.